Welcome to episode 38 of It's Server Time. We're doing a quickie before the fall finals. We want to get our thoughts out about the major and everything that transpired there. So we've got Note, we've got Pronogo, we've got, I think, Mix for the next one. Maybe he even joins midway through this one, but it seems like he's busy right now. We'll catch him. We'll catch him another time. But we just want to talk about this before the fall finals happen. Get this pod out to the masses who have been so desperately craving another episode of It's Server Time. I see your calls. I see your pleas. Let's do it. All right. So we're gonna talk about first the major results. This is overdue discussion that we needed to have. So the way I wanted to frame this between us, though, is not necessarily just like, yes, Outsiders won. We all know that Outsiders won at this point. But what I wanted to talk about is of the teams that did well, Note and Pronogo, which of them do you think will have the longest sustained success in the top five? So just to get everybody on board with this same discussion, the HLTV rankings moved up a lot of teams and they moved down some teams. So when we look at that week, that right after the major, teams like Outsiders are first now. Heroic is number 2. Cloud9 is number 3. Navi 4. Furia 5. MOUZ 6. We'll include them in this discussion. But of these 6 teams, who do you think, let's say, in a few months from now, because it's a little hard to say, just given that the end of the circuit this year is just Blast stuff, but say come Katowice, say come the first season of Pro League, Blast Spring groups, all that stuff, when all these teams are playing again, who do you think is going to maintain top form like this?
I think Heroic will just stick to kind of where they're currently projecting. They've given me nothing to say that they'll just suddenly drop off. And this new roster is still performing quite well. They obviously kind of hit their stride here as well, even though that they ended up losing in the final. But yeah, I mean, the way they're playing right now doesn't make me doubt that they can maintain that kind of form. They're not basing it on someone popping off individually or someone having a hero tournament really. So that to me kind of gives them some form of consistency going forward.
Heroic is a weird one to me because I wasn't expecting them to go this far. I was also expecting them at some point to drop off sooner than they did. I was just every single time they went into a matchup, I was like, no way that they get that deep. And then, there's a lot of talk about how Outsiders didn't necessarily beat a great, crazy top team in order to make it to the major final and then obviously take it. So I kind of feel the same way about Heroic. I think probably the most impressive scalp they took during playoffs it would probably have to be Furia. It's okay, you took Furia. And that's weird because Furia is not the top 10, or maybe they are top 10, but they're not considered a really high level team. Of course, I have to eat a little bit of crow because I did say on this episode or on this podcast and others that there was no shot that there would be any Brazilian teams in the playoffs at all. I didn't believe in Furia whatsoever. That. Yeah. So I'll eat a little bit, but I don't think Furia's run themselves was particularly impressive to get to the playoffs. They did, of course, demolish a bunch of teams once it came to the legend stage. So, little egg on my face, but I do think that tracking these teams into the future, I honestly feel like Heroic is unlikely to make it to another finals in any of the events, the tier 1 events, I should qualify, that they play for the next 6 months or so. I don't think they're going to repeat their second place performance here. And I don't even know if that's particularly a spicy take either. It feels to me like they're not a team of champions, and that's been fairly consistent this whole time. You can't even say so. Them and the Gambit, now Cloud9 roster are 2 teams that obviously rose to prominence during the online era, and I kind of feel like Cloud9 is the better of the 2 teams, but only by a little bit. I mean, obviously Cloud9 won an event, right? And so maybe you can say that this is now Heroic's time to prove that they can sort of actualize on that. But I feel like it's too far gone, too far removed from the heights of their success in the past. I don't think I'm ever seeing them get a puncher's chance to win another tournament. I don't know. They would need to do some roster moves, and I don't even know what roster moves they would make. So yeah, I'm going to say Heroic probably don't make another final.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't think that they're going to be a title contender
sure,
in international, giant international events, but they definitely can maintain top 5. Is what my original point was.
Yeah, I would put them. It's almost unfortunately for Heroic, I kind of put them in the same position that I had them in with Refresh.
Yeah,
it's kind of a lineup that I think is strong enough and believes it, has a good enough system that they don't have like it doesn't rely as much on top heavy performances for individuals. Like Stown didn't even have like it didn't even seem like he was particularly impactful in this whole tournament. Like Cadian was pretty darn good. Shush had some good games. Tessus too. I mean, Stown wasn't bad, but he wasn't the level that we were hoping he was going to reach this year. Like I think
Yeah.
Stown is gonna end up in like the top 20, but like I'd be shocked if he's in the top 8. I think maybe 8th this year, maybe top 8 to 14. You know, like he's not like a top 5 player by any means or anything like that. And that's still what it feels like Heroic needs if they want to make the leap. And the only way I could see them doing that is like another roster move if they like but it's just like what I kind of say about teams like Heroic or what I've said before is that with how they play, with the personnel they have, and with kind of what this org's aspirations are, I don't really think where they are in the space is necessarily bad, but I just think that it's not getting any easier to win a grand finals than what they had potentially there at Rio. So it's tough to imagine that they fall out of the top 6 for me, but I think that where they are number 2 is a little too high, but it's I mean, you can't really argue with it based off of how they played there. I'd say, I guess, teams that I actually kind of weirdly think are sustainable is MOUZ. I've really come around to this team, and I seriously trust the system that they run now. I think that they just kind of do a good blend of taking map control correctly, and they also have really like efficient mid rounding. And I think sometimes they make the game look very simple in mid rounds, and I think that actually works to their benefit because it just feels like they kind of know what the next step is in a round. Everybody, like, there's no guesswork, there's no questions. It's not like they have to big brain mid round or anything. It's like, okay, when we have this, when X happens, we do Y. When we do A, we always end up doing B, unless A like works or X works to like such a great extent. So I like MOUZ a lot right now. In fact, yeah.
I'm not super high on MOUZ, to be
Okay,
honest.
really? Okay.
Like not as a long term like top 5 contender. I don't think.
Yes.
Like, I think that they are a decent team, but like top 10 for
Top 10.
Like,
Top 10.
yeah.
There's no shot that they go for more than top 10. I mean, maybe they win. They should definitely be in the running to win some of these tier 2 competitions, right? I'm blanking on all of the names, of course, because I don't really watch those, but like there's like the Champion of Champions tour and stuff like that.
Yep.
They should be easy contenders to basically like what Copenhagen Flames' new roster is farming right now. That's what they can do. They can do all that if they really want to. If they want to go down to that level and like grind all those games, right? Maybe they feel like they're above that now. Who knows? But the fact that I've always rooted against them, and I said this on the off angle, but like, this is what's supposed to happen with a team like this. You're supposed to say, there's no shot, you're not proven, you're not going to make it. And then they make it once, and you're like, oh, that was a fluke. You know, Cologne, whatever, Astralis even made it. Who cares about that? Like, you got disposed of later. Let's move along. And then they make it again, and they're like, EPL, well, that was also a weird scuff tournament. And then, like, you know, Liquid almost won it over Vitality, so whatever, move on next. And now they're at the major, and they make semis. Like, that's pretty impressive. So, you know, there's only so many times you can say, I'm doubting you, you're not going to do it, and then have them do it. And before you start to say, okay, well, I guess I have to give it up. Top 10 team, probably.
I can't. I mean, this is so strange. I mean, I too thought that the Cologne run was very fluky. But since the Cologne run, they it feels like they are only getting better to me. That's what's weird about MOUZ. Like like I do see an upward trajectory with this team where looking at the names on the screen or like on paper, all of these guys, except with the exception of Torzi for me, and I'll get to Torzi later, but I just see all of them being very hungry. They're very young, and they still kind of have that like honeymoon sort of smell to the team where they all know that they can get better. Like they all know, like, this is basically one of the first runs they've had. Like, what? So they added Exertion after Cologne.
After the player break, yeah.
Yeah, so they added him after Cologne, and since then, all they've done is made playoffs at Pro League, semifinals of a major. I think that's incredibly impressive because Exertion also is looking way better than, like, the roles don't really match one-to-one, but he's way better than Bemis. Like, he's just so much more valuable to this team. And I don't know.
It's also Frozen's role change is helping that team a ton as well, with him getting into like more of a passive role as well.
Yeah, he got some of Bemis's spots.
Yeah.
And now they basically have like a Deady Space Taker entry in Exertion. Dexter does it a little bit too, for prodding for info type stuff. And then they have a really solid support in JDC. Frozen is sick in all of his positions. Like he's like more passive, I'd say, on T side. I think CT side he still has a couple things where he's like fighting for space. Like I think banana, for example. Like he does that. For T side he takes banana. So like he has some aggressive, some like he's got a balance, and it basically seems like he gets to just pick whatever good spots he wants. And that's good because he's their best player by far. But where I do have a little bit of hesitation with MOUZ is Torji, because I prefaced this a while back when they made the roster move that I thought that Torji would have a really great first 3 months, but I thought that his next 6 months would be very tough on him, and I think that's almost gone accordingly. Like his Kato debut was excellent, and then since then it's almost like his rating is just progressively getting a little bit worse. Teams are figuring out his style a little bit more, and I think if MOUZ want to hit the next level and actually become a championship contender, unfortunately, they either need to replace him or they need to like really work with him to try to revamp his playbook. Because I'll just kind of go through some of the numbers here. Kato, he didn't even do that well. Now let's see it. The play-in he did very well, and then the Kato itself he had a 1.01. Then some other big tournaments that he played: Dallas 1.06, Cologne 1.08, the EPL itself 0.97, Rotterdam 1.03. And then the challenger stage 1.18 of the major, but then the actual major 0.98. Like these are not good enough numbers if you want to have an opper. And I've just said before, like with how he plays, it's just like the way he farmed tier 2 opposition was just so unsustainable. Like pushing through smokes, just going for aggressive plays all the time. Like you need to just be able to manufacture shots that are safer. And he doesn't. He just has not proven that he can do that to me. And so that's the one thing that I guess limits them. But other than that, like. Give me this rifle core of Frozen, Exertion, and JDC, and I don't see like to me, there's not too much of a difference than like I can't believe I'm saying this, but I don't see much of a difference between that and like between Shushdown and Tessus. I don't think it's that much worse. It's worse, but just by a hair. Like I would put Heroic's better. Heroic's just a better team overall, for sure. But MOUZ is not far behind them with that sort of rifle core. Like I think Frozen, like match it up. Like Frozen for Stown, I'm giving the edge today to Frozen. Actually, I think Frozen's better than Stown right now. JDC a little worse than Shush, and then Tessus for Exertion. Actually, pretty similar. Pretty like weird. And then the thing is that Exertion has such a higher ceiling right now because he's so new to tier 1. So I think that he could get better than Tessus. Actually, I think Tessus is. Actually, I think their mechanics are very, very comparable. I think Tessus has a better spray, but Exertion's first bullet and crosshair placement is just a little bit better.
It's pretty sick. I mean, to be honest, I thought you were going to go for like some more wild comparison than that. Like, that's a pretty appropriate trio to compare, I would say. Like that's kind of the closest in scale. The way you were kind of building it up, I thought you were going to go like mega egregious with it.
I think it's just because I thought that comparing them to Heroic, like I think a lot of us have praised the rifle core of Heroic so strongly over the last few years that it felt like maybe like I don't think MOUZ should jump the line like that necessarily, but now I mean after the results and everything that I've seen, I just don't think they're very far off from that. Dexter is a little bit weaker though, like as an IGL, but he actually sometimes can play pretty well individually. So like,
he had some pop-off moments to get him past Ents, for example, to even get them into playoffs at this major. So that was pretty surprising. Like as soon as we got to Mirage and we saw that like starting streak on the Snappy side, I was like, okay, Snappy's back in playoffs, baby. Because I'm whatever, I'm a bit of a fan of him. But then obviously Dexter popped off, got it back for his team. I think it was like 30 plus. I think it was a 30 bomb on that map. So like
I think he was like got 30 on like the last round.
It might have been just barely,
like
So.
Yeah.
But it's like crazy. You wouldn't expect that from your IGL, especially an IGL who's like, I don't know, like the fact that Dexter can be streaky, as we've seen from this event, and maybe there's probably been a few other performances that I've just overlooked in some previous events. I feel like that can be one of their biggest assets. Where if for whatever reason, your stars don't show up, like. I think it was in Stockholm back when they still had Olafmeister. FaZe had a game where Kerrigan popped off to get them through the challenger stage into legend stage. And I don't even know how close that run was. I can't remember. It was so far back, but I'm pretty sure that was like a narrative that like Kerrigan was popping off in challenger stage and like leading by example and all the other tropes that you say when an IGL is fragging, especially if they're not known for fragging. But like that's very rare for Kerrigan, right? Like we praise him more for his tactical maneuvers, his ability to outcall the opponent, and the way that he uses his pieces really well. And so if your pieces disappear, like you wouldn't expect Dexter to be able to pick up the slack. But some of these games he really did, and that is impressive. And I guess he might be the most veteran player left on this roster at this point. So like, maybe Frozen and him are sort of tied, but I still feel like maybe Dexter, because he's probably a bit older as well, like he's probably in a bit of a more like experienced leader of man role. I don't know how well he does in that role, but that's the sort of role I would put him in based on the rest of the complexion of the team. I would also compare it to like you were talking about rifle cores, and NIPs obviously screams out to me as like this rifle core that should be able to carry them to wins.
Should be strong, but it's not res-opping now.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, I guess maybe not. And I know we weren't planning on talking about NIP necessarily, but that does remind me, anytime somebody brings up res-opping, I can't remember who it was. Was it DJL? It was somebody in the NIP camp said Res has the mechanics to be like simple.
Yes.
DJL, yeah.
It was DJL. Yeah.
Why are people so hell-bent on saying that somebody has the mechanics to be like simple? Like if you're going to big up your team, like if I'm in a relationship and a woman is like talking to me and saying like, you remind me a lot of Fabio, I'm like, all right, listen. I don't think Fabio shopped at the Gap, if you know what I'm saying. So this is not true. This is not true. Don't pick me up that much. I just feel like it's too saccharine. You're pulling the wool over my eyes too hard. So like that's the sort of vibe I get with comparing somebody to Simple. No, bro, come on. Like not really. I know he didn't do very well at this event, but that's irrelevant. Like just body of work. I don't know if anybody can live up to Simple's mechanics. Maybe Munacy in like 5 years, but that's a conversation we can have in the future.
Yeah. I mean, mechanic-wise, just pure mechanic-wise, the only person I think is Munacy that stands up to Simple right now. But like, that's not the point with Rez is almost just like he needs, even if he has those mechanics, he should be imposing himself. But we can talk about Nip a little bit later when we when we talk about the fall finals and what's going on there. But okay, so we got like Heroic staying maybe a top 5 team. I'm maybe a little bit higher on MOUZ. It's like almost like this. Wherever Heroic is, I see MOUZ being like one spot in the ranking beneath them. That's like almost just tit for tat. Like it would be.
You think so? I mean,
yeah.
when I look at the ranking, like okay, so we have like Outsiders, Navi, Cloud9, Furia, Vitality, FaZe, Liquid, G2 if they like stop shitting the bed. Like there's a lot of teams that I think just match
G2
up.
will be better.
Yeah, but the thing is like basically most of those names I see Heroic stacking up far better against them than MOUZ on a consistent basis. Like MOUZ in their current form might get wins over those teams at the moment, but I don't see that happening in 6 months. Like I don't think that that's going to be a consistent factor. So like I can see it. Like I don't think it's cut and dry in the sense of like you can't be like, no, MOUZ is going to be like, I don't know, bottom of the top 15 or something. But I don't know. I don't think I would say that they would be a spot above Heroic.
No, not above Heroic. They're going to be beneath them. They're going to be
okay. They're
going to be beneath. They're going to be right beneath Heroic. Maybe
that's fair. Like a 5 and 6 kind of deal, or 6 and 7.
Yeah, I think where they are. Like if I'm talking about sustainable, just whatever they're doing. Top 6, top 7 does not seem outlandish for me.
That's fair.
Anymore. Yeah,
that is fair.
Even if they move up to, well, I guess they're not playing anything for the end of this year, so they will just drop in ranking. I think
they're not in any of the Blast events. It's just EPL that they're getting events for, and also they skipped Elisa because they made the major playoffs. So I think they actually have 0 events. Yeah, obviously. Yeah. I think they have 0 events lined up for the rest of the year right now.
Yeah, so then I mean I guess literally they will get worse, but like I just think that this, in terms of looking at this team, I just think they're gonna get better. Even I don't see why they would get worse. I don't think this was that fluky. I felt like the only thing that was fluky is how badly Cloud9 choked to them. So maybe they lose right there. But
the only thing that was fluky is how many fans Galas moved into the arena at the third map. That was fluky. I don't think that'll happen next event probably, but
Yeah, actually, that MOUZ, I think that MOUZ Cloud9 game was louder than the Heroic Outsiders Grand Final. I'm not gonna lie, but
Yeah, because you start like halfway through it, you were hearing Fury. Oh wait, no, that was the Outsiders.
that's actually facts. That's actually facts. Now that you say that, yeah, people were coming in, getting hyped for the game that was coming next.
Oh yeah.
Okay, hold
But I
on.
think it was Outsiders v MOUZ, and Outsiders was like about to win, and then they lost the second map, but they looked like they were gonna like stop the comeback. And I know every time Outsiders went around, they were cheering, and just in my cynical brain, I'm thinking they're just saying go next, show the next game. Like that's all they're thinking about because Furia was up next against Heroic, so it's just that's a separate thing.
I want to take this moment to get a petty grievance out of the way. I'm kind of tired of talking about the whole fucking crowd thing, but I will say, like, so I was listening to Talking Counter right after the major ended, the one that you were on, Alex.
Yeah.
And Yanko in there calls into question my journalistic skills when it comes to tweeting a picture about the crowd and me saying, wow, it's disappointing that this semifinal on a Saturday isn't as filled up as other semifinals.
Yeah.
And then, Alex, you reply, that's phase, and I say it's a major. And then Yanko goes and says that, oh, but because it's phase, like, obviously it's going to be more filled up and shit. So then I send him pictures of, like, other semifinals that have happened. And then he tries to say on Talking Counter that I'm, like, sending stuff out of context and that I'm, like taking pictures and, like, trying to devoid them of the context of, like, the fan fest. I didn't do any of that, first of all. I was directly replying to him saying that bigger teams would draw, like, bigger crowds, which, yes, it's true, but he can't then go and say that, oh, like, there's all this other context. Like, that's the point, though. Like, it's an issue in the end because there's so much other, like, stuff drawing the viewers away. There's, like, the fan fest outside. Like, saying inherently that the crowd is disappointing indoors is not it's just a factual statement. And I think, like, even you said it on like, Snake and Banter. I haven't finished listening to that episode, but I think, like, you were mentioning it, or like someone was mentioning that, like, that crowd is disappointing, and, like, now more people are coming out and saying the same thing. So, like, I just find it really weird that I was, like, put on blast for that when A, it wasn't what I said, B, it wasn't what I was saying, and C, it was a direct reply to, like, something he pointed out in that sense. So that's my little petty grievance on that end, because I think, like, that's a little unfair to take me out of context.
Yeah, come on, bro.
Like, do that.
Is this going to start the back and forth? Now you're questioning Yanko's
No, because I like Yanko. I don't hold anything against him.
Yeah.
I just think, like, trying to, like,
sure,
like, I have the freedom on my Twitter to be like, wow, this kind of sucks. Like, that's not me, like, making an article and being like, wow, like, look at how shitty ESL have done this event and, like, how bad the crowd is. That's just me being like, yeah, like, here's a picture I took in Antwerp. This is how it was. Kind of sucks. Like, I wish there was more people. Like, there's literally nothing wrong with that in my eyes.
Yeah, I will somewhat. I mean, I recall one of the responses from Yanko, and I'll try to. It's not like I'm gonna play devil's advocate or anything like that, but it's like what I remember him saying specifically was that we kind of have everybody in the community kind of has, like, a duty in some ways to, like. And this is, again, like, I'm paraphrasing him, but he said, like, people have a duty to, like, push forward the narratives that they want to be in the space. And I think he kind of was, like, along the lines of thinking that if you put forward an idea or even kind of, like, something factual, but it does take away from the event, then it almost is like, and this is where I don't agree with him. It's like he almost, like, says you're slighting. It's like, again, paraphrasing, you're slighting Counter-Strike. You're slighting this momentous event that we're all trying to, like, witness, and this is supposed to be etched into history for the game and stuff like that. But, like, I think where I would go against Yanko there is, like, not every event has to be better or bigger than the last. It just won't happen. I think that sort of thinking is unsustainable. It'll all inevitably lead you to disappointment. And just to be completely honest, like, I don't think that if this event were I mean, I think if it were hosted in another area, it would have done better. I mean, my ugly point on Snake and Banter was I think majors should just be in Western and Central Europe, honestly, because it's just got the best fan base. I think there's an argument for the East Coast of America too now, but I haven't
even reached the end of that episode yet. So
yeah. So, like,
okay.
for that, I just think, like, what I think Yanko is what I wouldn't actually do if I'm you is I wouldn't censor yourself, and I wouldn't try to like spin this in some like CS:GO is the GOAT game and every event is the GOAT. Like this is the new highest level that we've ever achieved for the thing. Like it's okay to take a step back, or it's okay for there to be for progress to not be linear. Like it's sometimes okay that it's just like flat lines for a little bit, because then it could pick up later. Like see, like nobody thinks CS:GO is dying anymore. Like this game is like that's literally so removed from the conversation. So I don't think we need to be afraid of the next major doing worse than the most recent major. Like
Yeah.
there's no way that the bracket is going to beat what happened for Antwerp
No.
or Stockholm. Like those
Not a
were just
chance.
dream scenarios that came out and we all loved it. But like I don't know. I just don't think that there's really any reason to like draw so much issue with your tweets, because your tweets were just literally taking screenshots of what was happening.
And
like
by the way, like
yeah.
Aside from the Antwerp photo that I took myself and posted, the other like stream screenshots that I took from past majors were all in like the team intro section. So it wasn't during the match or anything. It was comparing the crowd before the match happened, just like in Striker's video. So it's not like I was taking it like midway through like map 3 of an overtime or some shit. Like I was trying to be fair in that sense as well. So like, yeah, to your point, like I agree with what you said. Like I don't think it's also not like my job to sell ESL's event. Like if it was, then like I would be working for ESL.
I'm not even really sure if it's the talent's job to sell ESLs, but you know what I mean? Like, I'm not even sure where I fall on that. And I think maybe Yanko was trying to run damage interference or whatever a little bit. That's what it seemed like. And maybe to a lot of like skeptical or whatever fans, they might also think, oh, this guy's defending the event because he's at the event. There's, of course, this whole like undercurrent of like, hey, you can't say anything to get on Brazil's bad side while you're in Brazil. That might not be the safest way or to go about your business, which I don't know how true that is. Like maybe that was felt, maybe that wasn't. But it's just like you're not going to expect people who are there working for the TO to like badmouth them in any way. I just wouldn't expect them to.
Well, you generally don't do that by principle anyway.
Yeah.
People have been fired from broadcasts for doing that.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So
I think like, and also like when I do. Like I try pretty hard not to like compromise my integrity, and I try very hard to communicate with people in advance before I tweet things out. And I was talking to people at the event before I tweeted that out, for one, and for two, like I will admit, like during the previous stage, I did make a mistake in that I tweeted. Like I directly took Nexa's word about like the round restore that OG had or something as like gospel, and then I had one of the ESL admins reach out to me and be like, "Yeah, that's not what we told Nexa," and he's like totally misunderstanding. So I was like, "Okay, that's fair. Like I should have probably reached out in advance. Like that's 100% my fault. Yeah, like I will fess up when it's a mistake like that, but I don't think the tweeting about this was a problem in that sense."
Yeah, and I'll remark on ESL side a little bit. I think it's because like I mean, Yanko and I both get hired by ESL for practically everything. They are a bulk of the money we make every year is tied directly to ESL.
Yes.
But I think it's safe to say, and I have no qualms even expressing this, that ESL learned a lot this event. ESL learned that you cannot be beholden to galas. You can't like a fan experience in some ways makes sense, but it also like you need to like weigh when it's appropriate, because if you value just how the crowd looks, because actually in terms of pure revenue, I actually don't even think the fan experience is bad for ESL. I think they probably profited from it because it means that the capacity, like, there were tens of thousands of people. It wasn't 10,000, it was tens of thousands of people at all of this event. And that means they sold tens of thousands of tickets for the fan arena, for the stadium. Like, it was a huge ass stadium. I think, 18,000 capacity? Like, we don't even see that number usually for CSGO. And not only was it very full for Furia, the Furia Navi match, so you could imagine that probably there were like 15,000 people in there, but the fan arena was also packed. So that's like, I'm gonna just go out on a limb and say like 23,000 people for the entire Furia Navi game, or Furia Heroic even. Like, that's a wild success by ESL standards. But if they want to value how the broadcast looks, which they probably, I actually don't know what they should do. I don't know if they should just value profit and getting like as many people there buying tickets as possible, or make the broadcast look good. Because there's a give and a take there.
So for me, like if it was any other event, any other ESL event, I absolutely would not care. Like if they can value their profits in that sense, for sure. A major is a celebration of Counter-Strike. Like it's not the same. It's not like I think yes, they absolutely should be able to make an effort to make a profit, and they can do what I'm not saying that they shouldn't try and make a profit on a major, but like at the same time, you do have to value the fan experience at home as well when it comes to a major. Like that's like kind of pivotal. Like the broadcast shouldn't suck and I'm not saying it sucked, but like it shouldn't like be third fiddle to like the fan festival and like and the experience there, right? Like I think they did a pretty good job for the people that were on, like the Brazilian fans that were there to like interact with all the pros and stuff. But like, come on, having an Imperial signing session during like one of the main semifinal matches or like quarterfinal matches, like, come on. That's
like we know where people are gonna go. Like we know what people are more interested in. Yeah. Okay, I think we could bring in. I think we could bring in Mix.
One more point was that I also will say I despise them saying that I was chasing clout by tweeting that out. Because I literally muted Twitter notifications the second I made my last reply to him. I literally cannot give a fuck about Twitter, like likes and retweets and shit. Like it's kind of like for me that's minimizing like anybody else having an opinion just by tweeting something out, and that was like kind of fucked up to say. In my eyes, like that's not cool.
Yeah, that's it was a pretty reductive way to characterize a lot of the people that were frustrated with the crowd. I'll admit that. I think I even mentioned it that a lot of people felt very thirsty for interactions at the time of the major, and so I don't know if I want to apologize, but I will say that I think that it was just a poor way to characterize everybody else, because I think like a lot of us just at the event had a very like, and maybe we took from the local the local Messiah in galas, and we made it an us versus them type of affair. And we actually were kind of feeling that, like it felt like, and I think a major has a lot of pressure, so I think that was probably like a little bit of a lashing out between Yanko and, because I know I jumped in a little bit on that, but if I expressed that towards you, Note, then I will apologize.
I don't think you did.
Okay,
then it was just like a general conversation. Like Yanko kind of brought it up directly, and then I think you guys were just talking about it. But yeah, like,
okay.
I don't really.
Yeah, I would apologize if I said that about you. But
yeah,
right. I do think there were some people that were just like farming and baiting really hard and just saying like Brazil crowd equal bat whatever, and then they just would just like
I literally had tweets saying like the Brazil crowd is cool, like I like the passion that they have. It, like my only point was that wow, it kind of sucks that some of these games aren't filled up. That was kind of like I had direct replies to people where I'm like, I'm not hating on Brazil, I'm not hating on the crowd, like it just kind of sucks there aren't more people for some of these games. Yeah, that's kind of the end of my point there for
that. Okay, we're gonna bring in Mix to the call,
Nice.
So that he can hop in, and he's ready to go. He should be here. All right, so we want to talk about Anubis coming in, but first, let's say our goodbyes to Dust 2. And what did you guys? Okay, first of all, do you guys think this was the right move? Should it have been Dust?
You know that meme with the dancing people with the coffin? That's me with Dust 2, because it's absolutely fucked that map. Okay. I'm so glad it's gone.
You know what's really wild? We literally could have had 3 maps gotten removed, and all of us would have still been happy, I think. So go ahead, Mix. What's your angle?
I was gonna say, I mean, I'll be biased, and I'll always say I fucking hate Vertigo with passion.
Same. Bro.
But objectively, Dust 2 is probably worse, at least at the moment, and more boring. At least more boring to me. I don't know, especially like the new changes at Dust 2, it never really like clicked with me. It was never very interesting. Yeah, so fuck it. I mean, I know a lot of people said like they read out Mirage, but I still think Mirage is like way more interesting from like a strategy perspective. Like,
don't ever take out. I'm just being honest. Don't take out Mirage. Like unless it's instantly swapped out for an updated version of Mirage, I do not want to see it to go. Like it is a great map.
I think honestly,
I really do like Mirage.
What they should do if they want to update Mirage, they should do what They should do what Moses has come up with a couple of, or like suggested a few times, where they just like alter the bomb site layout a little bit. Like they move the like default boxes and like make it triple, or like they just kind of change the layout of certain bomb sites a little bit to keep it fresh. Like be a good way to like revive the map a little bit without taking it straight out of the rotation.
Do you have any idea how confusing that would make callouts, and especially when NA goes to EU and vice versa? They already don't know what a firebox is or what a default or triple is. They already fuck those up all the time. that would be glorious chaos.
I think it'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're in agreement. We're in somewhat of an agreement that.
Yeah, I would have prioritized Vertigo and Vertigo, Ancient, Dust 2 in that order, but you know what? It's still one of the top 3 maps that I didn't need to see anymore. So
I want to hear your. Well, actually, I want to hear Pranogo's ranking on like what do you think the worst maps are, like in order?
In order of worst, so it's probably I would say so. It's obviously
including Dust 2.
Okay, including Dust 2. So it's obviously Vertigo top 1. It's just unwatchable. The fact that the audio is still a problem. Like Valve would need to somehow devise a method of like making certain materials not transmit sound, and then you can have vertical maps. Like then if I'm walking above you and you can't hear me, that's great. Then we can actually have a map where there's rotations and there's positioning and there's all these things that make Counter-Strike great, but Vertigo just exists outside of that, outside of the
only
mechanics.
good thing about Vertigo, I'll say, is that it does allow for some like unique opportunities in terms of like lurking on T side, like lurking your way up B or towards A, which is something that like Dust 2 doesn't have at all.
Like, I love vertical as an idea. I love verticality. When Engage came out, and then I found out that actually there was an earlier draft of that community map that had like a 3rd level. In A, I was like, oh, that would have been interesting. Like, I actually really like verticality. The problem is that there's certain aspects of Counter-Strike's like engine, if you want to use that term, that just don't fit with it, right? Like mechanistically, you have to make some changes. So Valve would need to do that if that's the kind of vibe they would go for. And also, Vertigo is just such a missed opportunity. We could have like, I don't want to call it platforming sections, but we could have something like that where you're like walking around some steel cranes or some sort of construction equipment on the outside of the boundaries instead of it just being like a bunch of 4 blocks in order or whatever.
Yeah.
Like there could be a lot more interesting gameplay there for like rotations or whatever that maybe is a bit more skill testing. I don't know. There could be something there. So Vertigo is definitely top 1. Ancient's the second worst map. And the only reason it's not worse than Vertigo is because like at least it has the ability for you to, like, for a while, by the way, it didn't have functional audio because everybody remembers the spawn sounds where that would just randomly give away your position for rotations. And the fact,
was so
I can't believe that Valve didn't just remove the water until they fixed the bug. They couldn't at least give us that as like, okay, this is ruining Counter-Strike at a professional level, guys, but we'll just keep it in until we can fix the bug at our own pace. You know, like what is going on there? But it's still just like, it's one of the maps that was hit the most by the fact that CTs can throw smokes everywhere and have spammable stuff with no tracers. Like it's still just a spam map. It has so many of the same problems that now Inferno has, that obviously Vertigo has, and had way more before. When everybody remembers when that A site ramp wall on Vertigo was like a bunch of wood instead of the metal. Like it was literally spam fights for the entire like opening 30 seconds, whatever. So that's just silly. Vertigo still has a problem of being an A-take simulator in some cases, but at least sometimes you can now leverage the rest of the maps. There have been marginal improvements. So yeah, it would be Vertigo, then Ancient. Ancient's just too like dominant for CTs, but also makes it so that as soon as, like the reason why it's retake simulator is as soon as you lose your forward position as CT, you have nothing to fall back to. So you have no way of like having some sort of in between. Like you think of any map, like you think about Mirage.
A little bit condensed. Yeah.
Yeah, you think about Mirage, you can like take an angle and then fall back and still be on the site. In Ancient, you have to take an angle, fall back, and then you're out of the site and have to retake. Like that's just how it is all the time, So that's like the biggest thing. And then it would be Dust 2. We talked about it being boring, but I'll skip over that because it's out. Right. And I'll just say Inferno would probably be the fourth worst map, which is kind of weird to say.
All right, we're not gonna go into Inferno slander on this pod.
No Inferno slander.
I agree. We're gonna just let's shift the conversation to Anubis. To Anubis.
Cut him off.
Yeah, I'm gonna say first and foremost, I think this was the right pick between Tuscan, Anubis, I guess Breach.
Breach would have been, the other one.
Cash, maybe. I don't know why people are still asking for that to be added.
Old Cobblestone. Isn't Old Cobblestone so amazing, guys?
So I could have stood, and I would not have expected this because it was the most recent map out. I could have stood for a train, but I'm very glad it's Anubis. This map is actually good. I think like I've said before, like the mid just feels wonky to me because you have to hard left, hard right clear, and I just think that's bad map design in general. So I want to hear you. Have you guys played much Anubis, or what are you guys thoughts?
I haven't gotten to play much of it. I mean, I know it's not a Valve map, right? It's a community map.
Yep.
So
Valve own it now, though.
Yes.
They bought it from the
they
from
bought
the
it.
creators. Yeah.
So
That makes sense.
so now we're gonna have to wait for them to update shit. But yeah, for sure.
It was like my worst fear of what could possibly happen. There's always a bad silver lining.
Yeah.
People said Cobble didn't understand that. That map was pretty boring. So much
Dude,
nostalgia.
that's nostalgia
Cash.
glasses.
I don't know. Cash is like fine, but it's not really exciting. Like the new Cash wasn't very exciting to me. So Anubis, I haven't really played it much. But just going around it, it just seems like a solid map. I really like how it looks compared to like Ancient. Ancient's always just come off like really bland to me. I feel like Ancient has like a lot more potential than it's currently being used for at the moment. So Anubis, it just kind of looks nice. Seems like it plays out nice. Obviously, I haven't played it, so I can't for sure say. Like you said the mid seems kind of weird. So yeah, I think it's a good choice. I honestly would have liked to see like them just take out 2 maps and put 2 new maps in.
Yeah,
same. I feel like that would be really interesting to see. Just to see
also
how,
like the
teams
perfect
handle
time
it
to
and-
do it, really.
Yeah, it would have been great, but oh well, at least we got one, so I
Yeah.
won't complain too much.
And it was posted earlier that the Blast World Finals will actually feature Anubis. So like maybe
I'm
if there were
glad.
if there were 2 maps,
glad.
if there were 2 new maps, maybe that wouldn't have happened because that would have been too extreme a change for only 3 weeks out. But now that if it's only 1 map and we get to see it before the end of the year, I mean we theoretically do. It might just get permanent, but I hope not. I hope we get to see it. So.
I think
some teams are gonna play it for sure. Because especially if you're an underdog team, why would you not play it? Like you should just if you think you're not, if you are like NIP, it just makes so much sense for you to try to get good at this map because nothing's going well for you. Like
if you're a team that permaban Dust too as well, like the amount of versatility you could have by putting this into your map pool early, like you would be able to fuck around in the vetoes so easily.
I think like I don't want to play Fluxo and give them a chance to pick Anubis.
Right.
Yeah, dude, some of these underdog teams, like I feel like teams should not float it against the underdog teams right now. It'd be kind of fucked. But
that would just be a horrible idea.
Yeah, we've seen it happen before, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Feel like people never learn sometimes.
Sometimes veto strategy is just bad for top teams. It's just literally bad.
Sometimes C9 will forget to ban overpass against FaZe at a major.
Or Nuke. It was Nuke.
Oh yeah, that's what it was. Sorry.
Yeah, but that's just stupid.
I was gonna say I've played it a couple of times and I did enjoy it. I think you're right in the sense that, like there are some tweaks that definitely need to happen. But it's not like a map that's broken or feels like mega like one-sided in any way. Like it's one that I actually think like we'll see a lot of quick meta development on, which I like. Like I like the idea of teams like putting this in their pool and trying to innovate very quickly.
Yes.
It doesn't feel as like restrictive as Ancient is. It is a little bit like in the timings with the CT side versus T side getting to bomb sites. So I think like it will be like it might be a little hard for T's to get map control, but at the same time, like I think there's like a lot of potential for this map going forward because I think like I've played it 6 or 7 times, and then I've played it a bunch in retakes as well, and both of those were like I just enjoy it. Like it's fresh, it feels different. Like the way duels are feels different. I just like think it has a lot of potential.
Retakes on it. I love playing retakes on it. I think the angles on bomb sites are so unique, and it's like it's also just like just some needless Valorant shitting on, but it is why CS:GO is just so much sicker than Valorant, because you could like this bomb site couldn't exist in Valorant. Like they are just weird freaking angles that like utility in Valorant that needs to like fit into these perfect like square like unit, like a 12x12 unit. It just doesn't work on some parts of Anubis, and I love that. I love that it's like kind of it just has all these little quirks and like just weird. It just feels weird and new.
Yeah.
Hard agree on the idea that Anubis has some really interesting angles. That's one of the most unique aspects of it, dating back to its earlier renditions back when it was first put into the game, I think now 2 years ago. I really enjoyed the fact that there was all sorts of unique things that you could do as far as like actually taking gunfights on the map, maybe positioning yourself. You know, I've called out that big area in the A side of the map that the T's approach, they have this giant walkway that feels like really disconnected from a lot of the rest of the map. But conversely, that allows you to set up utility, that allows you to take space or lurk or like here for rotations. And so even though maybe it seems weird on its surface, the longer you play the map, the more you actually try to use it as a tool for your advantage, or try to like play around it as a CT. Like you're paranoid leaving A. If you ever leave the A bomb site as a lurk, you're like hyper paranoid that somebody's just lurking in that walkway, and so you have to like slow walk the whole way and avoid the water because that sloshes, and that's kind of like weird and inconsistent. But generally speaking, I really like that Anubis is actually in the pool. Like this is the first community map made since Cash, which kind of had its own history with CS anyway, that is in a situation where it's actually added to the active duty map pool. This is like kind of a watershed moment for mappers in general. So if you're a mapper and you really like making maps, but you're like, oh, I'm demotivated, my map will never get featured. Well, hey, look, Anubis did it, and Anubis walked so you could fucking run. So I'm looking forward to seeing what comes of this. Like maybe in the future, this will just be a regular thing that now we're going to start to see more community made maps as that level gets higher. And the other thing I'll say is, we talked about Valve buying the map, and we do have to wait for them to update it. The one thing you can give Valve about Ancient and about Vertigo, and especially Overpass, although that's a very different beast because it's so far removed now, is that Valve, when they update it, if they update a map, they will raise the percentage of like how good that map is by a few percentage points over time. And it doesn't really matter if the map's already like a 20 out of 100. Like, okay, now it's a 23. Like that's Vertigo. That's Vertigo, right? So it's like, okay, whatever. But if we're giving them something better as a community, like if the community is providing better maps, like better floors, and then they improve on that, suddenly we're like, we could have this game on. Like we could have amazing maps in the future that like redefine what actually is a good map in most people's eyes. Like I'm not saying that Anubis is necessarily going to do that, but the fact that like it holds the most controversial part of the map and the most exciting part of the map. It has the canal that you can drop in or boost up into, which is like the best part of the map, I think, in terms of like what's unique about it, alongside the angles that we were talking about earlier. And then obviously it has like the double door and like the weird clear and stuff, and like the choke point you can just throw one smoke at. And maybe that's a little bit weird, but I think maybe there's a bit more nuance that people give it credit for, and there's going to be like all sorts of different like mind games people do. It might not be the most satisfying thing, but it's going to be a thing, and the fact that its proximity is so close to something that's so unique about the map, I think means that it's just generally speaking going to be interesting to watch mid gunfights, even if people are writing it off right now. So yeah, even like the part of the map that you're in like doubting kind of has some hidden value that like you're interested to see where it goes, right? So that's really exciting.
It just feels like original without feeling gimmicky.
Yes,
which I like. Like it doesn't like you go and play like if you go to Valorant, like they're like we'll chuck a third bomb site in here to make this map different.
I heard a map has a zip line. Is that true? Like, is that actually real? There's a zip line map.
There's like a zip line on a couple maps.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's one map that has a zip line like down the center that you can like go to a bomb site from like either side of it. Yeah. It's really fucking weird. But yeah, like it feels like it's not gimmicky in the way like the map is designed with like originality. Like it does bring new stuff to the table. Yeah.
Vertigo's gimmicky. Anubis is just well constructed and unique.
Yes,
yes, exactly.
Sick. I do want to say though about that zipline Valorant map, Fracture. I prefer Fracture over Vertigo, and I don't even have to think twice about that.
I mean, it's hard for me to even contest that, actually.
Yeah.
But I think what's cool about Anubis is that also, I think of this as like a greater picture thing, is that on certain maps that Valve has introduced, because like you mentioned it with like the spammy wars Pernogo, like that we see a lot on Ancient and on Vertigo, where they just A1-S spam through smokes. Anubis is not necessarily a map where like I can easily envision a spot that's so vital that people are just going to be spamming it. One, the A1S is a little weaker, but two, I just think that like this is a map where I just think people are going to be so rewarded for being like very thoughtful and having foresight in terms of the fights that they're going to be taking. Like when I just think of like how the A bomb site is like kind of like a, how do you even describe it? Like a spiral sort of thing, like that's moving up. And like the mind games people are going to play against each other on bomb site fights are just going to be so interesting. And it's going to just like people will literally like I bet you there's going to be some insane post plant clutches on B and A that are like almost going to be graffiti worthy in the next major. Like I would be shocked if someone doesn't just outplay the hell out of another team on one of these sites and wins a huge round, because there's potential to do that, especially if someone like Monacy is just like on A with an op like behind a pillar or something just weaving. Oh, it's going to be, I just can't wait for some of the fights to emerge on this. Whereas when I saw Ancient, it was like this is like a lot of open space that's
Yeah.
just gonna get people are just gonna get mowed down. It's just gonna be some like unskillful brawl that's gonna happen. But on Ancient, I don't think that at all. I like how almost claustrophobic. It's not claustrophobic either. It's like there's a lot of options, but they're just different. Okay, I'm
Well,
glad we're all in
Ancient is
agreement.
like baiting for smoke walls and all this other stuff to like, you think about the
Yeah.
A-bomb site, how open it is from like the big box / brokey spot to like where the rest of the bomb site is. It's like, oh yeah, well you just throw 3 smokes, then it's great. It's like, okay, yeah, if you just create all the cover and then play around that, then it's great. Yeah, it's a great map if it has cover added to it by the players. It's like silly. It's like you shouldn't really need that. There's some examples where it's interesting, like Nuke, but even then it's like, well, you could get around that with a flashbang or something. Like when it's on a bomb site, it's completely different. So yeah, I agree. Ancient doesn't have the same fodder for really highlight plays and like playing around the pillar or playing around like any of the other cover in like the B-bomb site, for example, the big obelisk and all of this different stuff there. Like you can actually play it. It was almost like, I feel like Anubis is constructed in such a way that even if you have really good utility, you have to account for like being able to like mechanically or positionally outplay your opponent around that utility. Like if you think about throwing a smoke on the B-bomb site between the obelisk and the back wall, that like quad spot or whatever people are calling it, you can actually see over that depending on what you stand on. You can actually maybe there's a gap somewhere. Like it's actually really hard to smoke that off completely. And people are even saying, yeah, throw a second smoke on that exact spot just to get it through, or throw a molly or something. It's like people are going to have to do that sort of thing if that's the approach they want to be. And I feel like, I don't know if it's hard to deliberately design around that, but I think it's a testament to how well crafted this map actually is, that it's not going to be very easy to just win a map based on utility alone. And that means that it's very much less likely to devolve into smoke spams for sure.
Yeah. Okay. We are in a unanimous agreement that this is gonna be good. I mean, what's eventually gonna happen, I think, is like we're gonna figure out that there's some like OP spots that CTs have to get smoked on every time or whatever. But beyond that, I think this is great. I would. It's super early to say this, but I want to put this up there with like some of Valve's best changes to the game in the past few years, just including this map for not only the reasons that the map is just good, but the fact that also it indicates that they are looking in a greater picture sort of sense of like using community maps. That's just such a great step in the right direction. Okay, since we're limited on time, let's just try to run through this one quickly on the A1-S op nerfs. Let's start with the one that I think is more mild, the op nerf. Do you guys think 5 bullets is a huge, like, what's your take on 5 bullets?
You know, we had a Patreon question exactly about this, and I was saying, yeah, I would just cut it in half to 5, and then you guys were saying, well, maybe 7 or 8 would be better, because then it's like, oh, you still have the potential to like rebolt and then have like, 5K or whatever. I do think that you guys were correct in your points, though, that like this is actually, I tweeted this out earlier, this is probably the end of like op 1v5s, op 1v4s, or anything like that. The amount of precision you have to have is so much higher. But like the benefit is, like, we might have thrown the baby out with the bathwater because those clutches are amazing, and it would be nice if it was still possible, right? But the benefit is you're not going to see oppers just like spam half of their clip through a wall while they're like waiting for their opponents to come in. You know what I mean? So that's like probably the biggest benefit that I can see is like this is Valve trying to end the spam wars between like putting in a map that's really hard to do, the A1-S nerf and the op nerf making it harder to spam, or like less likely that A1-Ss are going to be the only gun on the CT side. So I do think it's going to be a net benefit, but I also think that maybe this was a little bit too hard, and like maybe my overcorrection suggestion of having 5 shots, I'm starting to see like maybe there's a little buyer's remorse on that idea. Obviously, I didn't actually author the change, but like me putting that forward, now I can kind of see maybe what other people were thinking. It's like it feels really different to opt now. Like it feels much harder, much like the stakes are super high, and the gun is so expensive. And now if you miss one shot, I mean, sometimes you were dead anyway if you missed one shot, but if you miss one shot now, it's like it feels very different. You have to like fall back for a lot longer.
It's punishing to miss a shot, like way more punishing to miss a shot now than it was before. Like before you missed a shot, like maybe you lose positioning, you like give up ground for like tees to entry or something along those lines. Now you like miss a shot, you like literally are like the amount of plays you can make is reduced because you like have a limited number of shots to then play with. I think in general, the idea of reducing the op bullet count is good. Like we talked about that. I actually think it might have even been on the last episode, if I'm not mistaken, or like 2 episodes ago. So it's pretty funny timing. Yeah. But I think like I still stand by what we said before, where I think like 6 or 7 would probably be like a slightly better number. in this case, I almost feel like they should increase the reload speed by like a small percentage, like even 5 or 8%, something along those lines. Because that would like it would still leave you with the punishment of having far less bullets to op with, but it would like kind of balance it a little bit more in that scale. Like you would still like the op reload time is still pretty fucking long. So I think like if you balanced it in that way, like it would still allow for the occasional like really sick highlight clip moment because like I don't know, maybe simple as like I don't know, big box does too, even though it's gone now, but like dancing around that, reloading after shooting 3 people and like somehow pulls it off, you know, like shit like that would still be fun to watch, I think.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the A1S. Let's talk about this. This is the one that I think more people are fixated on. Seems like it's going to have a bit stronger impact on the meta. So, did you guys see that Twitter post that guy made about like all these spots that are going to now change for A1S holders? I think that was really illuminating. I'm glad that person that made that post, shouts out to them. But I still think the A1S will be like popular. It's really hard to say that like just that is going to make people stop spamming smokes, and everybody's found out that there's just too much value in spamming smokes, and that's the only issue I take with it, that it's hard now because people have really recognized the biggest benefit of the gun, which is just not having tracers.
Yep.
Yeah. I think it's not
damage was good too, actually.
Yeah.
But
I think it's not enough of an update. I wouldn't say not enough of a nerf, but like for example, if they switch the price points between the two M4s, that would be like perfect, I think. Like having the A1S still worth a little bit more, but have like the advantage of being silenced and having like a slightly better like overall ability to spam through smokes and stuff like that while being slightly more expensive, like then you're kind of looking at it as when you're in a better position. Again, also if they enable the ability to buy both rifles, that would obviously change and make it far more ideal, because then you would have players kind of like when your CT side is going really well, you can be like, okay, now I can buy the A1S because it's like I like worry a little bit less about the extra $200 that I'm spending. Whereas like the A4 balanced at 2,900 would kind of still, like for me that's more of a justifiable price point. Like I don't know how much you guys have played around with the A4 recently, but it still feels like substantially worse of an option than the A1S. Like I would see no reason to ever set the A4 right now, even if the fire rate is slightly faster. Like it's just not worth it.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of is that, well, okay, so I said this as well on the most recent episode of The Off Angle, but for posterity's sake, a very quick truncated version is the A1S having worse damage at range is an inversion of what the gun actually should be. Like, it doesn't make sense, because the gun is actually physically longer, so it sticks out more, right? And then the gun is more accurate, so you can actually hit stuff at farther away ranges. And then also, like, there's the silent part and all this other stuff. Ideally, making a close-range gun, like, if you're going to say it has slower fire rate, that's another thing. It's like the A4 is the close-range gun. It's shorter, more compact, it fires faster. Why would that be the gun that deals more damage at close-up, or less damage at close-up? Like, it just doesn't even make sense when you're trying to break down what the guns are. So that feels really strange to me from just a design perspective. And then coupled that with the fact that now the A1S, like people have figured out, I think Maui's right, like people figured out that the A1S is bought for its tracers, lack thereof. It's bought for its accuracy. It's bought for the fact that you can like very liberally shoot it. And like even the fact that it's like a surprise, it's a land gun. People have rediscovered the fact that this is a land gun because nobody can hear anything.
The spray is tighter as well.
Yeah.
Like it's just a generally easier weapon to use.
Yeah. So I mean, just based on that alone, and like the fact that it is cheaper means that there's pretty much no reason to buy the A4. And also a slight technical tangent. I don't think we'll ever see the A4 and the A1S be on the same buy menu, because Valve have hard-coded the game to only have like 6 slots or whatever. And so they would have to probably undo a stupid amount of code just to remove that limitation, as far as I know. Or they would have to remove like the auto sniper or something, which I don't think anybody would care about, but Valve would probably
They
never
can't do that because of the skins.
Yeah. So, or they could move it to heavy. I mean, the fucking riot shield is in the heavy spot with the shotguns because again, Valve doesn't know how to like put another slot in the equipment tab.
Riot shield skins are coming in the next update, actually.
Okay.
Following the blast major.
Yeah.
I want to know, Mix, rate the gun changes out of 10 for both changes at the same time. Put them in a box. What's your rating? What Valve did with the gun changes here? How would you rate it?
I'll give it like a 6. That's what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
It's like the A1
Nah.
doesn't seem enough,
Yeah.
and that's kind of sad because I really like the A4. I've seen people play with it, and it has such good skins.
Dude, it just
I
sounds
want-
better,
I miss-
doesn't it? It's like
Yeah, it
more
just sounds
primal.
better.
Yeah.
It's nice. Like I
It
see
sounds
like
better in an arena for sure. Like not even
Oh, yeah.
close.
I see someone with like a HAL skin, and I'm like, dude, this is fucking sick. Like
It's
I hope
art.
he gets yeah, it's art. And
The
so
A4 is art, and the A1S is what macaroni art.
Yeah.
yeah,
I
and then the op
No, sorry, go.
change. I mean, I was gonna say like the op change is fine. I definitely would prefer like 7 bullets. Maybe I'm just biased because the only gun I can use is an op. Because I can't spray.
Then you should be loving
But
the
yeah.
A1S, dude. Come on.
True, that is true. So I don't know. I think the op change is fine. It's still very impactful. You definitely have to make your shots count. And I mean, when someone does actually get a fucking ace and just hits every shot, right, it just makes it even more special. So I think the op will still be fine. We'll kind of see how it plays out. But I really wish it would have nerfed the A1S a bit more because I just missed the A4. Just
go.
Personally.
I think the part that also really sucks is that now that they did this nerf, I feel like they're not going to readdress it for a while,
Yes.
which means that we're kind of locked into this. Like, we're not going to see them like switch the price points or something like that either. They're just going to be like, okay, now we're going to wait a few months and see how this update plays out, and we're kind of fucked on both ends now.
Yeah, this was the opportunity to get this error corrected, and it was not fully corrected, I think, is the general conclusion
Yeah.
I've come to.
I think like as a I don't know, like I think that we're gonna probably still see the A1S a lot, but also I think that like I guess I don't want them to do too much because because like this isn't, I'll just put it like this isn't as bad as the AUG meta. This isn't as
No.
bad as so I'm not like, and I do think that this will actually have a decent enough impact after looking at all those spots where the A1S is weaker now, because some people were just body shotting there, and I think that you have to be a little bit higher skill with the weapon now to, hedge, go for the double dink or like the dink body shot or whatever. Like all that's a step in the right direction. So I might tentatively give it like a 7 instead of a 6. Like it's all right, I guess, but not a strong 7. Maybe 6.5
There you go.
if I'm being very
6.5.
particular about this.
There you go.
Okay. Again, let's try to let's keep this moving. The last topic before we do Patreon questions, we're just going to briefly talk about some teams at the fall finals that we want to see, either like that we kind of have some grievances about, or just like in general just concerns. Let's start first with, I think this is going to be a shorter topic, so we'll start with NIP. So let's just do them first. And I think that we all this was like, they looked really bad at the major, and I want to address the point that I think switching to English has made this team worse. Like, I think a lot of these players are not as sharp and as quick, and they're not calming as well, and they're not trading as well because they're speaking in a foreign language now. So anything you guys want to see from NIP, like, can Rez be good or what? Like,
Can Rez be?
Yeah, I mean,
That was the last time Rez was like a game changer. You know what I mean?
very early this year when he started using one-way smokes that I think DJL showed him. Honestly, that was it.
The thing that sucks about NIP is that Hampus, Brolin, and Rez could be such a sick rifle core, but now that they have Rez on the op, it's just kind of depressing because, like, where's the, like, I don't, like, their floor is so much lower, and like their ceiling, sure, like like if they all turn up and pop off, like if Rez is simple on a day, as DJ
He will
would
never
say.
be. He will not be that. Let's just be honest. He's not gonna be simple. Like,
So that's the
Not
thing.
even for a
like, I
day.
just don't.
Come on.
Not even for a day, to be honest.
Yeah.
I just don't rate their new lineup highly because of like that combination of factors between them switching to English and like their communication issues being kind of evident. Like, even in interviews they've said like they kind of like toe the line. They're like, yeah, it's kind of okay, we're working on it, but that's kind of like always a telltale sign of like, yeah, it's kind of shit right now.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just like between Rez opping and them not like playing or communicating well on the server, I don't really have much faith in them right now at all, like to kind of like curb their form.
The communication issues, we didn't talk about Vitality yet. I'm not sure that we'll get to, but I feel like the communication issues kind of mirror the Vitality sequence where everybody was like, well, they'll get better and they'll improve and it'll be like a linear sort of improvement for communication and team cohesion. I'm not sure. I feel like it's fallen off. It's like Moore's Law is dead. We're hitting the asymptote of like how good Vitality are going to be as a team. And I feel like the same thing is probably going to happen with NIP, but there's an outside chance that maybe they just like work better together. I really hope this lineup works out because I do rate Alexi B. And if you just have a string of like awkward, middling, like worse than expectations would give you performances with teams, especially with good pieces like G2 and now like less good pieces, but still good pieces at NIP, it's like people aren't really going to know, oh yeah, Rez was opping and that's why like they didn't do too well. They're just going to see, oh, you were on a team with Rez. Why couldn't you win anything? And like, I hope that Alexibi doesn't get that like over his head forever, basically like an Alex 2.0 kind of situation. So hopefully that works out for him, or he is able to parlay into a different squad or like a better set of players, or just like role swaps, put Rez back on the rifle maybe. Yeah, definitely the op thing is probably more concerning to me than the English thing, but both are a concern, a drag factor. And we would need to see more than just like a flash in the pan, which is, I think, what we all agree the RMR was. You know, we would need to see something that implies a consistent growth or, you know, some sort of curve going upward. And we're just not seeing that right now. So that's my biggest concern.
Where do you see their ceiling in like, I don't know, 6 months, I guess, since we're going into a break, but like, where do you see them hitting as a ceiling?
It would be kind of surprising if they're still in top 10, you know, or
yeah,
like
I think they're a team that can fall out.
Yeah.
I think they can fall out of top 10 for sure, looking at some of the teams that are not
they're
in it
15
right now.
So they're not there anyway.
Oh, okay, yeah. I'm just so used to seeing them in top 10.
Yeah.
That must be a weird low for this team after like sort of hanging on for so long.
And what sucks about this completely is that NIP were despite using ZTR and Linus and FOZY, they maintained top 7, top 8 for so long.
Yeah.
And that was the most impressive. Like, in some ways, like, they were like what we almost kind of, I don't know, they just felt like this team that just should never be doing this well, and they kept hanging on. Like, I could describe them so many times as like a cockroach, where it's like, they shouldn't be here. Like, just die. Like, they should die, but they kept surviving, and they kept, like, reinventing themselves just enough to, like, sustain some sort of semblance of success. And for now, like, I'll touch on one thing with Rez, though, like, that I really don't like about his playstyle. I think his mechanics are very good. I think they are actually, like when I bit a little bit too hard on when I saw them play Cloud9 because I thought Rez played very well individually, but what I've noticed once I started looking closer at him, especially their losses, he just passively rotates all the time with the op, as opposed to like he doesn't like look for his own shot enough. Like, he doesn't try to create for himself enough. He kind of just lets the game come to him. And I think that's a little bit of actually how he was as a rifler too, where he didn't know always when he should be moving forward or being more proactive. He was an incredibly reactive player, and because his mechanics were so good, he was a very serviceable reactive player. But I don't think as an opper that is how you can play today completely. Like, we have one end of the spectrum where Torzy just is like way too aggressive, doesn't even know how to be reactive anymore, but Rez is like the complete opposite of that, where he might actually have better mechanics than Torji actually, but he is just not putting himself in positions to like impose his skill on people, and I think he needs to be doing that more. So let's move on to Liquid. Mix, I know you wanted to talk about this team.
I did. What, am I just going from there?
Yes, take it. Take your grievances on Liquid. Take your team. Take it.
Well, listen, I don't want to shit on them too much. You know, I mean, this run of disappointing was major. I mean, the run at the major was disappointing. I mean, the biggest thing with for them at the moment, it's just like, it's not just that like Nitro is like bad. I feel like I can't, in like 95% of their games, I can't think of like any positive impact he has like as an individual. Like, just going, I was looking through and like his impact rating at the moment, his actually impact rating for like the past 3 months is a 0.67, which
that's abysmal.
People don't know that is abysmal. Like, that is really bad. Like, as a comparison, Taco the last 3 months is at like a 0.80. Kerrigan's at like a 0.9. Like, there's no one that's like kind of even close to that at the moment. And so that literally is just, I know he's like he obviously gives up like a lot of space as a rifle, like as a rifler, he's pretty much kind of like last in terms of the resources he's gonna get and invest in himself, especially on like CT side when you have fucking Elysian
It's
Yakadar.
worse than HooXi's impact rating for the last 3 months.
Yeah, that
Oh
is.
no, that's actually kind of unbelievable when you give that context. Is his rating itself worse than HooXi's in the past 3 months?
Maybe
It's just
let me see.
straight up
So
rating.
HooXi's is 0.89 for both rating and impact rating. Nitro's
This is a 0.86 rating, I'm pretty sure.
Oh
yeah,
my
it's a
god.
0.86
Yo,
rating
no.
and a 0.67 impact rating.
Dude,
Yeah.
how has
Dude.
this guy flown under the radar for this amount of time? I've
Dude,
never
we
heard
gave him a
this stat.
pass.
I think
We literally gave this guy
I think-
such a huge pass.
people have kind of given him a pass, like, because he came back from Valorant. It's like, oh, Nitro used to be pretty good fragger. Like when he was opping, he was like solid. He wasn't like he's honestly like Rez's now on the off. It was like the same rating, but and as a rifler, like people always like knew like he had like high peaks, and he's had like some pretty good matches over like the year. There's been some matches where I feel like he absolutely like just popped off, but it just hasn't really gotten consistently better at all. I mean, it's still like really bad now, and it's just I don't know. You just can't win consistently when you have a fourth player that is like I don't really know. I can't say much about his calling and like how much of it he does, like how that team works, because I would assume Elysian and Yakadar are both very vocal
Yes.
Yes.
in terms
they
of like
are.
the things that they want to do, and then you also have your opera OC that's gonna like want to dictate some things that he wants to do as well, and he should be. So in terms of like what Nitro's doing, does he have enough impact in the calling and like the overall system of the team to justify like that kind of rating? I don't think anyone really can.
No one.
Especially-
That's just actually
No.
too bad. That's just individually like it's actually a negative contributing factor, like completely.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah,
I actually want to get an idea of like how much he calls as well. So I stood next to them for a few rounds during EPL. Like he does have like he is vocal in like calling some rounds, but like during the mid round, there's a lot of talk from like Elysian and Kinder, a lot of input as to like where they should go next or like where like players are and what moves they should make like as adaptions. So like I don't know. I think like yeah, I don't know how you can justify that impact from Nitro at the moment.
That is just rough. Like, honestly, I was calling for HooXi's head before they went into the whole Giga Chad. Like, oh, he's actually doing well, and he got his life game against. It wasn't even Gamer Legion. That was the one that they lost. I don't know, some team that nobody's heard from since. And that was at the RMR. And obviously, them failing to qualify was like mega. Like, what the fuck? But I don't know. Like. With like that's just I can't fathom that he's actually worse than HooXi statistically. Like it's not like they're only
I like a
play-
substantial margin too.
well for impact,
That's crazy,
right.
yeah.
And so it's like I don't know. Man, that's like I'm actually a little shell shocked. I think I need a fan or something. I need to calm down because what the fuck? How could you be worse than HooXi? Like no disrespect to HooXi except for everything that I just said, but how could you? Like honestly, I don't understand.
I mean, his impact rating the last 3 months is literally like 0.2 worse than HooXi. Like that's
yeah,
that's not good.
I'm pulling up now just like the year stats for players and just who's the worst in the world now, and I
This will
think
be a good
Nitro's
segment.
yeah, Nitro's in the bot. Nitro is the second worst to HooXi for the year. Like, and and he's trending downwards. So, wow, like that's
the thing is that it's trending downwards. Like his impact rating is worse now than it would have been like at the start of the year, or like just his rating in general. I feel like, which
these
is
people. Yeah,
not the trend you want to see when he's coming back from Valorant. You would expect him to get like better and more into it.
Yeah,
Should Liquid buy MSL?
Yes.
Well, actually,
Holy shit, MSL and OC on the same team. That's like my dream team.
that would be for Mix. That would be his dream. But
Those
I
are
think,
two
like-
MVP oppers on the same team.
Oh my god. Okay, so for Liquid as in like a greater sense, like a big picture thing, like it does seem very difficult to imagine that they can because we've had this this is kind of has been a conversation for the last like couple few years.
Sorry to
what?
interrupt. I looked up so if you filter for top 30 teams on LAN in the last year, Nitro is the worst rated player.
He's the worst.
On
The worst.
LAN specifically, okay.
yes.
on LAN,
And
okay.
and Dexter is 0.01 above him, but yeah, he is the worst.
God damn, Dexter. What the
What
fuck?
is yeah, what the hell?
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
it's absurd actually.
That's incredibly disappointing to hear, because it's like They're kind of we had this conversation before, and I think it was mostly like started with like Fallen playing incredibly well with the AWP when SKLG were in their sort of era, if you want to call it that, and it was like this is the future of CS, and I think we actually kind of saw demonstrations of this at the major with Jame and Cadian.
Yep.
There's no real dead weight player on those teams. Like you can say like Kicker wasn't great or there's no one. Yabi wasn't excellent either, I'd say, but like really, like there's no one that's just horrible. And then they were able to achieve pretty deep finishes. I think we might have to restart that conversation in some sense now. Just that if these teams with IGLs that can either like be a little bit random and pop off like a Dexter, for example, or like a Kerrigan, but if you have a guy like Nitro that's just consistently
even
this
when
bad.
these guys are playing like when a guy like Dexter is playing bad, I feel like he's still having more impact or like Kerrigan than Nitro
Yeah,
is.
that's the thing. Like
Yeah.
I think they fit in the structure and the system a lot better. Like with the Nitro thing is like he's not even entering. Like he's not even if you're entry fragging and creating space for your people that can just trade you. Actually, the thing is your rating is just better because if you get traded, your rating goes up actually. So it's pretty inexcusable to be this bad individually because we also know at this point that like yes he's an IGL but Yukinder and a lot of other people contribute very heavily in mid rounds, so it's not like he's just literally microing everybody, nor would you expect him to when you have players like Elysian Naf on the team. So
Do you think if Daps came back as an IGL for them, they would be better? That he would be better individually as well?
it's honestly impossible to say no. Like it's impossible to say it's not impossible. It's what I don't know how I phrased that really badly. You could definitely say they would be better. That's what I'll frame that. They could be better with Daps playing. Yeah, they could be. That's the state of affairs for Nitro and Liquid right now. How unbelievable is that to even say that?
Because the thing is that like I don't know, like I wouldn't be surprised if they still keep Nitro going into the next year, to be honest.
Yeah.
But
I don't know, man. Like I know
even if they didn't, the thing is like I don't know like where the fuck they go from there.
Yeah.
Like from
yeah,
Nitro.
that's the problem.
Yeah, it's honestly like JT's not really a better fragger. Like if we're being really
I'm not
really
gonna-
brutal here. I mean, I think I've seen more JT performing better, but like I
He
think
has
it's
the
against
same
worse
rating.
competition.
Let's see.
I think it's
Same
against worse
rating, higher
competition.
impact. Yeah, it is against worse competition.
He is entering though, so like he
Yes.
runs out first. They get to bait it. Floppy gets to bait him. Grim gets to bait him. Like so, it works in the system. I think better actually, but I can't really find an easy replacement for him. But also, I actually don't rule out entirely just Daps. Actually,
Yeah, that's
just
the thing,
being
right? Like when I
better.
was thinking about it, I was like, that's maybe like
Yeah.
because he's also like been coaching them for a bit. He knows like generally what the structure is, so it's not
Yeah.
like there would be some massive jarring change if he was to come in.
just have
Wow,
Nitro
I think-
coach instead. Just do a direct swap.
I actually can't believe what we came to at the conclusion of like the main portion of this podcast is that we actually want Daps in and Nitro out. Like that's the craziest finish to this. Let's pivot to Patreon questions and
Yeah.
we'll close this out. Okay, so Patreon question from EasyPete. Are you got them ready, Bernogo, for the yeah, okay. So
They are
Patreon
on.
question from EasyPete. Going to throw one for Mix here. How do we assess Esatag's time at NIP, especially now that he's no longer opping?
I mean, overall, it's just I'm very whelmed. Not like,
Okay.
like it could have been worse. I feel like. I mean, I don't know why. See, NIP, they should have seen like what happens when you bring an Esatag and then make him an opper. Right, good things don't happen. They
Why'd
still
you
can
say it
do
like?
this.
Why'd you say it like he is one of the players of all time?
Yeah, he is.
Just, like,
Yeah.
same energy.
It's like Esatag's best role is what he's going to be doing now, which is like when he's just like the role player, he's like filling every role. He's super valuable in that. I generally feel he performs pretty well as he can or as well as he needs to. In those roles, he's pretty vocal. He's just a nice guy to like have around the team. He's always pretty positive. I assume his communication is pretty good. If it's English, he's obviously is probably the best speaker on that team, which probably helps him a lot. So I think with this core, like with this team, this is pretty good. This is like what he should be doing because I assume he's just filling. Alexi B and Hampus are both like guys that even as IGLs, they want to take like a good amount of space. They want to have the game kind of like revolving around them a bit more. And obviously you have Rez, who is opping. I don't know. Rez has just been so underwhelming to me for like such a long time. Feels like there's like he'll go through like a period or two where he's like really good, and then it kind of just dips back down again. And Brolin is still really good. I think that's like one thing STEGers can really help with is that Brolin actually likes a lot of those, like a lot of like the lurk spots and like the anchor spots. You'd kind of see some role players kind of fill. So I'm sure STEG doesn't necessarily have to play those. Like he doesn't have to play the same roles he would play on like Astralis, for example, back in the day. So he's kind of feeling more like that. So I don't know. I mean, I think he does like his job fine. I don't think he's like amazing or anything, at least on this team. So I'd say I'm not like underwhelmed. I'm not like, oh my god, I'm so impressed by STAG on NIP. It's kind of just it's been a time.
It has been a time. I still can't believe that this guy went from he gets bought out from Astralis, goes to Cloud9. You know, that obviously happened. Cloud9 was also a time. And then after Cloud9, he goes to Complexity, and Complexity is just like a total shit show. That was also a time. Now he goes to NIP. Device is like, now we can get started, and I'm gonna get out of here. And that's the third time in a row, dude. Like, how many times is this gonna happen?
So he's like, finally, I've got my boy STAG. I'm so ready. I'm a fucking lead.
That's pretty much what happens. So I don't know, man. That's nuts. Like that guy
STAG had such an unlucky like streak of teams that
just the last 3 years.
I can't really hold it against him too much.
Imagine if they just replaced Zipnix with STAG back and kept Device in that roster.
I don't know if he ever leaves, honestly, if that happens. That's crazy.
Wild. Okay, let's do next question. Andrew said, so Simple had a 0.87 lowest on his team in the match against Furia. He also had a 0.89 second lowest in the final against FaZe in the last major. Should Simple not receive more criticism and people question him turning up for big moments? I hope he does get criticism. I've been saying that his GOAT status is becoming it's still like undisputable, but it can become tenuous very quickly.
Yes.
So that's kind of where I'd put it. I don't know. What do you guys want to do? Some Simple hating?
I'd agree with that assessment. I think like
status. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say I agree with that assessment. I think like it is something that can become tenuous. It's not in dispute quite yet, but like when you're not turning up to big matches like that, it is something that is a blight on your record for sure. And I think like I don't think it's a consistent thing that always happens to him, but like yeah, the two like in the two big major appearances, especially one like this where Navi like this was their bracket. Like, there's no way that like you think that they're gonna ever look back on this and not be like punching themselves every single time they think about losing this losing that match against Furia. Like, this was probably one of their easiest major bracket runs, or not like easiest major bracket runs, but like this should have just been a major that they took home.
I think this is the easiest.
This was their easiest.
Yeah,
this is their easiest bracket.
Okay, there you go. Yeah. So it's like that's the thing. Like, I think you phrased it probably the best. Like, I don't think I can really elaborate much on that. Like in the sense of like it's definitely like starting to like turn the narrative a little bit in that sense.
Yeah,
awkward that he got Player of the Decade at this event after getting eliminated.
To raucous applause, of course.
Yes, and obviously with his name being Simulpa. I don't know who that guy is, but that's a pretty good one.
Of course.
Yeah.
Really? Did they typo it?
Oh, on the floor. Yeah, it was typoed wrong.
It was spelled incorrectly.
His name wrong.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't catch that. I wasn't.
I know you did.
I was.
Yeah. It's just,
I was not there, but
nobody else was. Nobody else was.
Okay.
Jesus.
Oh Jesus.
Yeah. So anyway, I also wanted to say, listen, Andrew, if you're back on Twitter now, but you should remember that there's more criticism for people named Andrew. Okay, there's no place for people named Andrew in this space. Anyway, just some Twitter.
As Carlos learned the hard way. Yeah. Yes.
Wait, Mix was gonna say something. I think.
Oh, okay.
What was I gonna say?
Something about Simple being bad at majors.
I was probably gonna say like I feel like his GOAT status is probably still kind of indisputable until like
Yeah.
ZywOo gets a major.
Yes.
Even then,
I feel like it's yeah. Even then, like I don't know, Simple has so much longevity, especially compared to ZywOo. So
Oh, yeah, actually, you know, if ZywOo wins the Paris major, and actually, let's say Vitality sweep next year, they win both majors, the conversation is
yes.
on,
I agree.
and it's not like a lot of people are actually. I mean, the thing is, ZywOo didn't actually has gotten eliminated in some ways where he didn't perform super well, but
Yeah.
he actually usually is. He actually usually is the one that's like trying to hard carry a team that's just fucking letting him down. So I think Simple has a lot of moments like that too in his career, to be fair, where he was like playing pretty well. But like there's just a lot of these moments where like the lack of world championships from Simple is just concerning.
I would
still.
say Simple's 2 majors away from entering that like very questionable area. Like
If he
2
does- if he bombs out
underwhelming,
two more,
2
yeah.
underwhelming major performances away. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
might be true.
Okay. Let's move on from that. Let's go to firsoch. Between C9, Outsiders, and Gambit, who had the most legitimate major win, whose was the flukiest?
Gambit
Okay.
was the flukiest. I will argue this all day.
Gambit?
Who's?
Gambit.
Yeah.
I think
I'll
Outsiders
say-
was the flukiest.
Yeah.
I think
Hold on.
Gambit's right in the middle. You have to remember, Gambit defeated an Astralis side in a comeback on Train.
This is true. This is true.
Like, there was no team even
That is
comparable
true.
to that on
See,
the Outsiders
but-
side of the bracket. They beat
but-
MOUZ and
but-
Fnatic twice in best of threes, and that was where some of their, like, of the, what, 3, 4... It was 4 best
Yes.
of threes they played, right?
So
what I'm thinking about though is that like
They-
Outsiders is usually a decent team outside of the major. They were a pretty like solid team. I feel like for most of the year. I mean, they've always had some struggles, but for me, like the thing about Gambit and why I say they're the flukiest is that team was literally absolutely fucking nowhere before that major. Like
That is true.
they were like 15th in the world. No one really gave a fuck about them. Like it kind of just came out of nowhere, and then they did nothing afterwards either. I mean, Zeus obviously left
Zeus
Gambit.
left. Yeah, I mean,
And they had the chance, but still, like nothing happened before, nothing happened after.
I don't know if you can call
So-
that a fluke necessarily.
So-
though,
so I
because,
think we
like,
have to-
their run was pretty legit at the event.
we have to define what we think fluky means
Yes.
here, and I think that so are we saying that the quality of the wins they got are like so the 2 ways I would say fluky you can describe it is, was the bracket draw very lucky, and so did that assist these teams, or were the wins that they got, did it feel like they came out of nowhere? And you could take either camp, because fluky has a loose enough definition that you could either say like they're beating teams they should never beat, or they have a draw that's so good like this is just handed to them. And I think Outsiders has the easiest draw by far of all three
Yes.
of these teams. So you could think it's fluky because they just got really lucky with their bracket. But then when you look at like Cloud9, they beat actually the teams that they beat in terms of world ranking to win that major. By the way, it was the number 1 team SK, the number 2
Yes.
team FaZe, and they beat the number 4 team G2, all in the playoffs.
Yes.
Like in terms of legitimacy of
Yeah.
that run, incredibly high. Like it's I'm sure it feels fluky, but they were the 5th ranked team in the world. So
Yeah.
in no way do I actually consider Cloud9's run really like fluky. Like
Yeah.
if you show up 3 days consecutively and you're the better team than teams that should be beating you, you were very good at this tournament, and you kind of deserve what is essentially what could have vaulted them or should have vaulted them to number 1 in the world status. It's just that they peaked at the right time. So no way do I consider Cloud9. But then it's kind of between like Gambit and Outsiders, and I think I would say Outsiders had the flukiest run because their bracket draw was just so easy.
Yep.
Yes.
Featuring 2 teams they had defeated previously in the tournament in their quarterfinals and semifinals matchups, and then obviously, I mean, Heroic is like, okay, maybe this is a team that can compete, but you expect to kind of crumble under pressure. Like, Heroic is the most impressive scalp Outsiders actually took at this event, and it was in the grand final, and they're not that impressive. So I don't know.
No.
It doesn't feel to me like Outsiders really had to do like. They didn't have to play their best games in order to win this tournament, which kind of defines fluky to me. It's like you didn't even need to be that good to win this tournament
I think
because
like
of
the way
people you played.
the way I would say it is that like Cloud9 beat world beaters to win their title.
Yes. And Gambit
Like,
beat a world
Gambit
beater.
beat yes, and
They
it's
beat
like
1, yeah.
yeah, and Outsiders not really like I don't know if you would necessarily consider like any of these like big title contending teams.
Outsiders were the 6th ranked team going into this event, and the
Yes.
teams they beat in the playoffs were ranked 16, 7, and 10. So it's like that draw is just so favorable for you. So with Gambits, it feels like it just feels like
and
the
in the
highest
group
variance.
stage they beat Nip, Spirit, MOUZ as well. Like also not huge names either.
Yeah.
Right. So with Gambits, I mean, I could see a case for Gambits being fluky because it's kind of like they just powered up in this perfect way that just felt like it was so far beyond what they were capable of. Whereas Cloud9's is like they were the 5th ranked team in the world. Like any team that's in the top 5, you think should have a chance to win a major. Like that's why that's what the best competition is, when the best 5 teams in the world all have a shot at it. But then the 14th ranked team in the world, Gambit, doing it, does feel fluky in that sense too. So I think they're both good answers, but I would not.
Yeah.
Cloud9's
Well, that
not one of
Gambit
them.
team was basically dead heading into the major, right?
Yeah, from behind the scenes,
they
basically. Like they weren't really. I don't know if they were talking about disbanding, but they definitely were not happy with the results that they were making.
So I remember pretty like vividly from the interviews, they said all of them actually had over 100 hours in the past 2 weeks, and they were losing
Yes.
every scrim.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would say they were on the verge of dying necessarily, but if that went badly for them, there probably could have been changes, but I don't think that was like it wasn't like there was some replacement in mind already as far as I knew.
Makes sense.
But yeah, I'll say this. I mean, just throw back to that Gambit team. That was like my first team that I actually liked in CS:GO. Actually, like back when when Zeus joined the roster, I think like around Columbus time or something. I think that's when I chose them as my team, and so that was a really.
I mean, I
fortunate-
will always just shit on that major one just to annoy Brian. I think Note knows, so that's what I.
Anything to piss off Brian, true.
Okay, next question. Zac Patel. Have a question. Missed a few weeks though, so feel free to disregard if something similar has been answered recently. What's one cheap thing under $1,000? Tier 2
Yeah,
tournament
so
organizers
really
can
small.
do to gain the most viewers on a tournament. Oh, so they're saying like, what's something TOs should do to improve the broadcast and get more viewers?
First of all, do you consider less than $1,000 a tier 2 tournament? Because I don't.
I know. I think he's saying less than a cheap. Like what cheap thing that is less than 1,000? The thing that they can do is
Like,
cheaper.
what can you
than
add to
I
it?
see.
It's less than 1,000. Yeah.
Gotcha.
How can they
okay.
spend less than 1,000 to make a broadcast better?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oof. Do you guys have any ideas?
Um.
This is a hard question.
bribe
That is a very
galas to
hard
move more
question.
fans into the arena. I don't know. That's probably.
Okay, so I don't know. I don't know
saying
what
a
the
cheap
cost of it
fix.
was. Yeah, I
Okay.
don't know what the cost of it was. So like, tell me if I'm wrong here, Alex. But like, for example, the We Play heart rate monitors were pretty sick.
Oh, okay.
I feel like you could make that under $1,000 for teams playing on stage.
Probably. It's probably under
That
1,000.
that adds like something cool to broadcast that I think would account for that.
I wonder if a custom UI is actually $1,000 or not. I know most tournaments actually have this, but a lot of it is like basically the same thing. So, but that's also like people are gonna split hairs over that all the time. I still think there's room for exploration for like customized, like different things on the HUD or moving things in different places, and like frequently in the middle of a gunfight, you might like look away from where the ammo is. And you don't know how much ammo does this guy have, and so like I remember somebody experimenting with putting the ammo like actually on the reticle somewhere. So like that could be interesting. There's all sorts of things people could experiment with, but as far as like surefire things, and also maybe we don't care if it's exactly 1,000. Maybe we can go a little bit more just for the sake of the argument. I do think the heart rate monitors would be banging. Like that's it just gives you more information when you're casting, when you're watching. You can
imagine having that like for the Furia Navi match or something.
Yeah,
on
sure.
stage. Like that would be sick to see like if Navi's heart rate is like spiking or not when they're having like the crowd cheer against them constantly. Like it's just cool insight that you don't really get.
Yeah, and imagine when Cadian pulls off that clutch. I think it was against Spirit, right? And he's like ripping off of his headset and stuff. Like it would just be skyrocketing, his hands shaking. Like just another point, another data point that could be cool.
I think this is just like a broadcast. This is free. You just have to have teams agree to it. I think playing team comms is just like that's something I love. I would actually go as far if you're doing a tier 2 tournament where if like because these teams that enlist in tier 2 tournaments kind of just they just kind of have to like they just have to follow these rules. You would just say to them, guys, once per game, we're going to turn off X-ray. We're only going to show your guys' POVs, but we're going to play all your team comms after freeze time. I would just be like, dude, I'm watching that whole round as closely as humanly possible. Like, I'm going to just literally just zone in and just like try to feel what the players are feeling. And I think that's just
I don't remember what it was, but it was WePlay who did that. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, WePlay literally did that, and it's free. It's free,
dude, it was amazing. I loved that content.
Yes, it's so sick because we got to hear and we got to formulate so much better analysis, and everybody knew then after, like, oh, these players are really good at talking in mid rounds, or these guys are good at making plans and stuff like that. And it was just like with MOUZ, for example, when MOUZ NXT was in it, it was like, boom, plan. Like, they're just way better than everybody at it. And it was just like, no wonder they're winning these tournaments, you know? So, yeah, I think that's gonna be it. Let's do shout outs, and then let's get out of here. So let's do Mix. Who's your shout out? What's your shout out?
I don't even know if I'm ready. All right, I'm gonna shout out. I saw a nice interview the other day from Oscar. Seems like he had a rough year on Titans. I really like Oscar. I think he's a good player. I really like seeing the old man just fucking pummel people, and I hope to see more of it.
Hell yeah!
Great one. Note, what's your shout out?
That's a good question. I didn't have one ready, but you know what? I'll shout out. I'll shout out Kenny S's return. Let's hope that he can do something with only 5 bullets in his op now.
That was going to be my shout out, but instead
I'll
shout
timing
out.
For that.
Yeah, of course.
You're shout out Kenny S also.
Well, I was gonna shout out Mix's shirt because it says Kenny. I thought it said Coney, and I was like, that's a weird shirt to wear on a CS show. But...
Coney 2012.
But if it's Kenny, then it's topical. I'll shout out Rolled, the main author behind Anubis. Congrats, buddy.
Oh, cool.
Hope they don't destroy your fucking life's work. Congratulations.
I wonder how much money he got paid for Val to buy that map.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's that's something I'm not even privy to, and I'm not sure what they've got.
I really have no idea, so I'm just intrigued by it.
Yeah. I would like, if I just throw out a number here, I'd hope it's like somewhere around like 150. Like, personally,
$150. That's a pretty good amount.
150K, 150K.
I don't know. Like, the thing is, mappers get when they go into the map pool, even for like the community, when they're not in the active duty, like when Breach was added or Tuscan, the mappers do get paid rent for the map. And as far as I can tell, it's worse than what skin makers get. So
yeah, and then that sounds about right. Like then 150 even sounds better. Makes more sense to me because I think skin guys make upwards of 6 figures. Like,
yeah, but it sounds about right, but it doesn't, because why the fuck do skin guys get paid more, like for drawing some pixels on, I'm being reductive deliberately, drawing some pixels, and then the guys who are building an environment for us to play the game in, they're whatever, that's less important, it's
just the ability to monetize skins is just a lot easier for Valve, so it's consumer to market to consumer.
It was kind of cool. I went onto one of their Twitters though, and they I think one of them was talking about like using AI to texture maps, and they had like a couple of examples, and it actually looked really cool. Like the fact that you can kind of do that going forward and kind of have an AI take care of a lot of the texturing and make it like you can basically input like spaceship alien kind of setting or something, and it'll like generate the texture for the entire map for you, and it'll make it like different throughout. So it's just really cool. Like stuff like that could be a future prospect to like make like releasing maps like sped up, maybe even if they're gonna allow like AI to generate all of that kind of stuff.
Okay. I'll do my shout out. I am just gonna shout out. Jeez, I had so much time to think about it going last, but now I don't even know what I want to do. I guess I'll shout out. Let's see, who do I want to? I'm gonna shout out. I'll shout out Boomich. Shouts out Boomich.
Oh,
let's get back on track, Boomich. Let's show the world what you're made of. Okay, that's it for me.
Let's see you on.
Boomich is a world class IGL.
Do I think he's a world-class IGL? No. Do I think he's a better IGL than Nafoni?
Nafoni.
Yes.
Nafoni. Yeah. There it is.
Got it right there.
Yeah, that's that.
Just cut it at the yes.